By the time they arrived and entered the compound through a big gate, the man's behavior changed immediately. His smile disappeared, replaced by a predatory look. "What do you want me to pack for you?" Uloma asked with a shaky voice, still carrying the tray on her head. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved closer and his intentions were clear. Uloma's heart pounded in her chest. She threw her tray away and made for the gate, but he grabbed her arm and pulled her into the building. Luna then realized they had entered an uncompleted building. She screamed so loud, but the walls around her seemed to swallow the sound as no one came to help. That evening, Uloma's world shattered. The innocence she had hung onto in the face of poverty was stripped away. The man had his way with her. Uloma was a beautiful 16-year-old daughter of a widow, simply known as Mama Uloma. She lived in an old-looking building with her mother in the remotest part of Aguda town. Uloma and her mother were fruit sellers. They sold different kinds of fruits in front of their house. This had always been Mama Uloma's line of business, even before her husband passed about 5 years back. Life had never been easy for them, even when her husband was alive, but it became even harder after his sudden and tragic demise. He was on his way home from the factory where he worked when a drunk driver knocked him down. He died on the spot and was buried 2 weeks later. Mama Uloma, who was already 50 years, was left to shoulder the burden of raising their daughter alone. She was 39 when they had Uloma after 15 long years of trying to conceive. Losing her husband was a devastating blow. Mama Uloma struggled so hard to put food on their table and pay their rent. She would sit under the scorching sun in front of their house, selling fruits. 11-year-old Uloma hawked fruits along the streets every day after school to support her mother. This was their routine for a long time, until Uloma turned 16 and her feminine look became more obvious. She had grown into a very beautiful and loving teenager. Mama Uloma developed a severe knee pain which prevented her from moving freely. She took different herbs, but the pain remained incurable, so Uloma did most of the running around. Concerned neighbors began to tell Mama Uloma to stop her daughter from hawking. "Your daughter is growing into a young woman," they would say. "You shouldn't let her hawk like this. It's dangerous. Men out there can't be trusted." Mama Uloma would sigh and shake her head. "If she doesn't hawk, we will go hungry," she would reply. It was the harsh truth of their reality. Uloma never complained. She understood her mother's pain and the weight of their circumstances. She was ready to do anything to ease her mother's struggle and put a smile on her face. But little did she know that her life was about to change forever. One day, Uloma went out to hawk as usual. Her tray, filled with different colorful fruits, was balanced carefully on her head as she moved through the dusty streets. The fruits, which her mother had spent hours cleaning, was beautifully arranged in her tray to attract buyers. With a very loud voice that rose above the noisy road, Uloma called out at her potential customers. "Fresh fruits here, buy your sweet oranges and ripe bananas." Uloma was used to the routine by now. She knew which streets were more profitable, which corners to avoid, and how to charm customers into buying her fruits. But no matter how much she sold, the earnings were never enough. The weight of their poverty pressed heavily on her young shoulders. That evening, as she was about to call it a day, a man approached her. He had been watching her for a while. The way he smiled at her. Uloma wasn't comfortable with it, but she pushed her discomfort aside. She couldn't afford to lose a potential sale. "How much for the oranges?" he asked her. "2 for 50 naira," she replied with a polite tone. The man got carried away, staring at her. Uloma shifted slightly, ready to move on. The man quickly nodded, then gestured for her to follow him. "My house is just nearby. I'll buy plenty from you. Please, come." Uloma hesitated. She had been warned by her mother and the neighbors never to follow strangers. But the promise of a big sale was tempting. They desperately needed money for her senior secondary certificate examination. She glanced around the busy street, then reluctantly agreed. As they walked, her unease grew. The man's house was farther than he had said, down a quiet, dimly lit street. Uloma had never entered that street before, and she wasn't familiar with it a bit. By the time they arrived and entered the compound through a big gate, the man's behavior changed immediately. His smile disappeared, replaced by a predatory look. "What do you want me to pack for you?" Uloma asked with a shaky voice, still carrying the tray on her head. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved closer and his intentions were clear. Uloma's heart pounded in her chest. She threw her tray away and made for the gate, but he grabbed her arm and pulled her into the building. Luna then realized they had entered an uncompleted building. She screamed so loud, but the walls around her seemed to swallow the sound as no one came to help. That evening, Uloma's world shattered. The innocence she had hung onto in the face of poverty was stripped away. The man had his way with her. When he finally let her go, she ran as fast as her legs could carry her, leaving her tray and footwears behind. With tears streaming down her face, she kept running until she reached the safety of her home. Mama Uloma was already asleep as she was feeling unwell. Uloma crept inside the house. She didn't dare wake her mother. She was scared of what her mother's reaction would be, and she was ashamed as well. She went to bed without food that night, and she continued to sob softly, not wanting to wake her mother up. She tried so hard to push aside the memories of what had happened, but no matter how tightly she closed her eyes, the man's wicked face kept appearing in her mind. Thankfully, the next day, which was Sunday, was her resting day, so her mother didn't notice that the tray she had gone out with the previous day was missing. Also, from her little savings, which she got from gifts, Uloma gave her mother the complete amount for the fruits she had gone out with, claiming she sold everything. With all that sorted out, she kept the incident to herself, never mentioning it to her mother. When her mother began to look for the tray, Uloma joined her in the search. They both gave up with the search when they couldn't find it. For weeks, Uloma kept the secret buried deep within her. She avoided the streets close to where the incident had happened, even though she knew the man might not even live around. She also avoided her mother's probing questions about why she seemed so distant. In tears, Uloma prayed every night, begging God to take away the memories of that day. Then, 2 months after, Uloma began to notice that something was wrong with her body. She didn't understand what was happening at first, but as the days went by, the truth became harder to ignore. Her appetite changed. Her once flat stomach began to feel hard. She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination. She wore loose clothes to hide it, hoping her mother wouldn't notice. But Mama Uloma did. One evening, as they sat in the fading light of their tiny room, Mama Uloma turned to her daughter. "Uloma, what's going on with you? You've been acting so strange." She said calmly. "Nothing, Mama, I am fine," Uloma mumbled, avoiding her mother's gaze. Her mother didn't press further that night, but she began watching her daughter more closely. The week after, Uloma returned from school to find her mother waiting for her at the door. "Come here," she said with a firm voice. Uloma hesitated before she stepped inside. Her mother motioned for her to sit, which she did. Without a word, she placed a hand on her daughter's stomach. The silence that followed was deafening. "Uloma, you're pregnant," Mama Uloma whispered as she trembled. Uloma's eyes filled with tears. She dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Mama," she cried. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't want this. He... Uloma tried to talk, but the words wouldn't come. She couldn't bring herself to telling her mother the full truth, and Mama Uloma didn't press further. Instead, she sat down on the floor and began to cry. The shame, the pain, and the fear of what laid ahead overwhelmed her. 2 nights later, Mama Uloma fell gravely ill. The shock had been too much for her already fragile body. She was also hypertensive. Uloma stayed by her side, feeling guilty and responsible for her mother's sudden sickness. She prayed desperately for her mother to recover. The next morning, Uloma went to the pharmacy and bought some drugs for her mother. She sat quietly in a corner of the room as she watched her mother sleeping after taking the pills. She had tried to explain, to explain what
happened, but the words had failed her. She hadn't even told her mother who the man was, or that she didn't even know his name or where to find him. Who is responsible? Her mother, whom she thought was asleep, suddenly asked. He forced himself on me, Mama. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. Uloma finally let out. Mama Uloma turned her head slowly, her weary eyes meeting her daughter's own. She reached out her frail hand, beckoning Uloma to come closer. Uloma hesitated, then crawled to her mother's side. My daughter, Mama Uloma called with tears welling up in her eyes. I have failed you. I couldn't protect you. No, Mama, don't say that, Uloma cried, grabbing her mother's hand. You've done everything for me. This isn't your fault, it's mine. I should have been more careful. Tears streamed down Mama Uloma's face as she cupped her daughter's cheek. You're just a child, Uloma. This wicked world took advantage of you, and now you carry a burden you shouldn't have to bear. Uloma buried her face in her mother's lap, sobbing uncontrollably. What will we do, Mama? I don't even know who the father is. I don't know what to do. Mama Uloma stroked her daughter's hair as they both continued to cry. She thought of terminating it, but she quickly kicked out the thought. Apart from the fact that her religious belief kicked against it, they barely even had food to eat. Where would they get money for the procedure from? She simply continued to cry. In the days that followed, Mama Uloma's health deteriorated rapidly. She grew weaker with each passing day. Her once strong voice was now reduced to faint whispers. She could no longer sell fruits in front of their house, and Uloma was too afraid to leave her mother's side to hawk. They lived on the little money they had saved, but it quickly ran out. One evening, about 4 months into Uloma's pregnancy, Mama Uloma called her daughter to her side. Her breath was shallow. Uloma sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. My daughter, Mama Uloma began, I don't think I have much time left. No, Mama, don't say that, Ulana cried, shaking her head frantically. You'll get better. I'll take care of you. I'll find money. Please, don't leave me. Tears streamed down both their faces as Mama Uloma continued. Listen to me, Uloma. You are my pride, my joy, and my only reason for living. I fought to give you a good life, but the world has been cruel to us. Still, you must not give up, no matter what happens. Promise me you'll fight. Promise me you'll stay strong. I promise, Mama. Uloma choked out, though her heart was breaking. Mama Uloma's hand trembled as she reached up to touch her daughter's face. You'll be a mother soon. Your child will need you to be strong, even when it feels impossible. Remember that you carry my love with you. Or suddenly, Mama Uloma's breathing grew slower and more labored. Uloma clung to her mother's hand, begging her not to leave. But no amount of pleading could stop the inevitable. With one final trembling breath, Mama Uloma slipped away, her face calm as though she had finally found peace. Uloma screamed. It was a scream of raw, uncontainable grief, a sound that seemed to carry all the pain of her short, tragic life. She threw herself over her mother's motionless body, sobbing uncontrollably. The only person who had ever loved her, who had fought for her, was gone, and now she was truly alone. The neighbors came rushing when they heard her cries, but none of them could do much. Mama Uloma's elder brother was contacted, and he came the next day, took his sister's body and Uloma to the village for the burial rites. Mama Uloma was buried 3 days later, and Uloma's uncle, noticing Uloma was pregnant, became very angry. He called her many terrible names. He gave her some money and asked her to return to Aguda and continue with her life. I don't have money to fend for mother and child, he told her. Uloma took the money and thanked him. She returned to Aguda and bought some fruits with the little money she had left. Every day she would hawk fruits like she used to, hoping she could make enough money for her needs. Neighbors made empty promises to help, but Uloma knew the truth. She had no one. So she concentrated on hawking her fruits, but she made very little money from it. Before her mother passed, they were owing the landlord 1 year rent. He visited Uloma one day and asked her to pay up the money within 1 week or get evicted from the house. Exactly 1 week later, just like he said, he returned, and when Uloma couldn't pay him, he left and returned the next day with 2 boys. They threw Uloma's belongings into the street. Uloma knelt down and begged him in tears, promising to pay up, but all her pleas fell on deaf ears. "You and your bastard baby can find somewhere else to go," he yelled at her. After they were done throwing her things out, they locked the door with a giant padlock and left the place. Uloma stood outside the house, weeping profusely. The world around her felt cold and unfeeling. She looked up at the sky, as if searching for some sign of her mother's presence, but all she saw was the cloud. With nowhere to go and no one to turn to, Uloma began her lonely journey into the unknown, holding a small bag that contained a few clothes. She made sure she moved very far away from Agoda town. The streets became her home. She slept wherever the night met her. Hunger and despair became her constant companions, but nothing could compare to the emptiness she felt inside. She had lost everything. Her father, her mother, her home, and now she carried a child she wasn't sure she could love. And though her journey was only just beginning, Uloma knew one thing. She had to survive, no matter the cost. She sat on the edge of the street every day, watching as people went about their daily activities. Nobody looked her way. Nobody stopped to ask if she was okay. It was as though she was invincible. She spent her first night on the streets under the open sky, clutching an old blanket that had belonged to her mother. It did little to protect her from the biting cold. The streets were no place for a pregnant girl, and Uloma quickly learned just how harsh and unforgiving the world could be. In the mornings, she wandered through the marketplace, hoping to find scraps of food or discarded fruits. Most of the vendors ignored her, but some sent her away. "Get out of here! I don't have food to waste on beggars!" One woman yelled at her one day, waving a broom at her. By evening, she would retreat to a quiet corner. She later found a quiet shed in the market and began to spend the night there. Every day, she waited for the owner of the stall to close for the day, before she quietly went there to sleep. She left very early in the mornings before the owner got to the market. One afternoon, as Uloma was wandering through the market, a man approached her. He was well dressed, with a kind smile. "Are you hungry?" he asked, with a gentle voice. Uloma hesitated. She had learnt to be wary of strangers, but the hunger in her stomach was stronger than her fear. She nodded silently. The man handed her a loaf of bread and a bottle of water. Tears filled her eyes as she held the food to her chest. "Thank you," she whispered gently. "You shouldn't be out here like this," the man said to her. "Where is your family?" "I don't have anyone, it's just me," Uloma said softly. "Come with me, I'll help you," the man said, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. Uloma followed him through the crowded streets. They walked silently for a while. He led her to a small house on the edge of the town where he offered her a place to rest and a warm meal. Uloma was so grateful to be having a decent meal for the first time in weeks, she thanked the man for his kindness. But as the days passed, Uloma began to notice things that made her uneasy. The man made strange calls and spoke in strange language. Then one rainy night, thinking Uloma was asleep, he made a call in English for the first time since she got there. "I already have a pregnant lady with me. I will do the needful and take the handkerchief to Baba very early tomorrow morning," he said quietly, but Uloma heard him. She froze at the realization that hit her. The man had helped her so he could use her for rituals. So, his so-called help came with a price, she thought to herself. She was really scared, but tried to keep calm. There was an empty juice bottle just by her bedside. She quickly and quietly picked it up and hid it in her blanket. Then she pretended to be asleep. After the man finished making the call, he entered the room and tried to have his way with her. With all her strength, Uloma used the bottle on him. The man passed out immediately, and Uloma got up immediately. In tears, she fled the house in the dead of night and in the heavy downpour. She left her small bag behind, and all she had was her blanket and a piece of bread she had hidden away. Without looking back, she kept running through the empty streets. When she finally stopped, her legs were trembling and she was gasping for air. She sank onto the ground and wept properly. She was back to being the homeless, pregnant teenage beggar. The next morning she got up and began to roam around again. Her situation grew worse as her pregnancy progressed. Her swollen belly made it harder for her to move. She was close to her delivery date by this time. She found an old, abandoned bus with broken windows in a bus park, and that became her new home. She continued to beg to survive until one night, at about 11:30 p.m., she felt the first pain of labor. She began to scream for help, but none came. The pain intensified, and Uloma screamed even louder. She tried to get up, but her legs were unmovable. Then, at about 6 a.m., she felt the strong urge to poop, and since she couldn't get up, she decided to do it in the bus. With a very strong push, she heard the cry of her newborn, and her pain was gone. Almost immediately, she managed to get up and she picked up the baby. "It's a boy," she managed to say amid tears. The tiny, fragile cries of her newborn filled the cold, empty bus. Uloma lay sprawled on the dusty seat, her body trembling from exhaustion and pain, her face streaked with tears. Her chest heaved as she stared down at the child in her arms, wrapped in her mother's old, tattered blanket. Instead of the joy she had heard other mothers speak of after birth, Uloma felt only fear, only a deep, suffocating weight pressing against her chest. She traced a trembling finger over the baby's tiny fingers, so delicate, so innocent. The child's cries softened as if he recognized the warmth of his mother's touch, but Uloma could barely hold herself together. Tears spilled onto the baby's forehead as Uloma's thoughts raced. She thought of leaving the baby there. If I leave the baby wrapped in the blanket, someone would find him, take him in, feed him and care for him. He wouldn't have to suffer like this, she thought to herself. But as she looked down at the tiny face of her son, something inside her broke. The baby stretched his small fingers and held weakly at Uloma's dress. The touch sent a wave of emotion crashing through Uloma. It felt like the child was pleading with her, not to abandon him. "I'm sorry, my baby," she whispered brokenly, looking at her baby. "I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be a mother." Uloma concluded within herself that she would leave her son by the roadside for a good Samaritan to pick him up. But as the morning light crept into the bus, she couldn't bring herself to leaving her baby like she had planned. She decided that she would find a way. Though, still exhausted and weak from childbirth, she got up and walked to the open door of the abandoned bus. Then she sat down and continued to cry as she rocked her baby gently. She saw some women setting up their stalls nearby, fruit sellers, food vendors, and traders who had owned stalls in the park for years. Some of them had seen her moving about when she was pregnant. With a trembling voice, she pleaded, "Please, help me. My baby, he needs help." At first, the women stared in shock. They had seen her wandering the streets with her swollen belly, but none of them had expected to find her like this, sitting in the doorway of an abandoned bus, weak, helpless, with a newborn in her arms. Then, one of them, Mamai Fatoma, let out a startled cry. "Ah, this girl has suffered. See how tiny the baby is. She gave birth alone? God forbid." The commotion grew as more women gathered around Uloma and her baby. Someone pulled the baby from her trembling hands, unwrapping the blanket to inspect him. "He's dirty. He needs a bath," the woman said, frowning as she looked at the dried blood and birth fluids still on the baby's delicate skin. Without hesitation, the women sprang into action. Someone ran to fetch warm water. Another brought a bar of baby soap from her stool. An older woman, who had raised many children, expertly undressed the tiny newborn and began to clean him. Uloma watched in stunned silence as they bathed her son right there in the open park. She had no strength to protest, no words to express the overwhelming gratitude and humiliation battling within her. Mama Ifoma turned to her, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and frustration. "Don't you have a family? Uloma lowered her head, fresh tears slipping down her cheeks. "I have no one. I have nothing," she whispered. The women exchanged glances, their faces softening with sympathy. More people began to gather, drawn by the scene. A young woman who had been watching from a distance disappeared and returned minutes later with a small plastic bag filled with baby diapers and clothes. "I don't have much, but take this," she said, pressing the bag into Uloma's hand. Another woman brought sanitary pads, shaking her head. "You just gave birth, and you're sitting out here like this. You need to take care of yourself." Someone else handed her a bottle of water and a plate of delicious jollof rice with beef, which Uloma ate hungrily. Another gave her an old but clean wrapper. Piece by piece, strangers and familiar faces alike contributed the little they had. Uloma could only sob. The kindness was too much. She had expected pity, disgust, or even scorn. Instead, they were helping her. After the baby had been cleaned up and dressed, Uloma cleaned her burst and began to breastfeed her baby for the first time. As the sun began to set, the park was gradually becoming silent. People started packing up their stools. Most of the women had left. A woman simply known as Mama Nyosi had visited her sick uncle in that town and was on her way home. She had been at the park and was attracted by the crowd that had gathered around Uloma that evening. She felt sorry for Uloma, and for strange reasons she felt the urge to help her. She stood watching Uloma for a long time, and after she was left alone, she walked up to her. "You can't sleep here with a newborn. It's too dangerous," she said. Uloma lifted her tired eyes. "I have nowhere else to go." The woman sighed. "You do now? You'll come with me," she said, staring at Uloma, her eyes filled with something Uloma had not seen in a long time. Genuine care. "I know what it means to suffer," she said quietly. "I was once like you, with no one to help me. If someone hadn't saved me back then, I don't know where I would have been today." She glanced down at the sleeping baby in Uloma's arms and sighed. "I can't just leave you here. Come, let's go." Uloma had no strength left to argue. She was exhausted, and her son needed warmth and shelter. So, without another word, she packed the few gifts she had received from people that day and followed the woman. They boarded a bus to the next town. The journey to Mama Ngozi's home was about 45 minutes' drive away. It was a modest and fairly furnished house, not luxurious but far better than anything she had known in a long time. Mama Ngozi pushed open the door, stepping aside to let Uloma in. "Welcome," she said simply. The moment Uloma stepped inside, warmth enveloped her. She had forgotten what it felt like to be inside a home. "Come," the woman said gently, leading her to a small bedroom. It was modest, with a medium-sized mattress and a wooden chair and table, but to Uloma it was paradise. "Sit," Mama Ngozi instructed. Uloma obeyed, lowering herself onto the bed as the woman disappeared into another room. Moments later, she returned with a plate of warm food, rice with stew and a piece of fish. "Eat," she said, placing the plate in front of Uloma. The sweet aroma of the food made Uloma's stomach clench painfully. "Thank you, Ma," she whispered, her voice breaking as she picked up the spoon with trembling hands. As she ate, silent tears slipped down her face. Mama Ngozi sat on the wooden chair, watching her closely. "You have to be strong, Uloma," she said softly. "Not just for yourself, but for that child." Uloma swallowed a spoonful of rice and nodded, wiping her tears. When she finished eating, the woman smiled. "Now, let me help you bathe." Uloma's lips parted in surprise. It had been weeks since she had last cleaned herself properly. She had grown used to the stench of sweat and dirt clinging to her skin. But now, standing in the small bathroom, with warm water in a bucket and a bar of soap in her hands, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Human. She scrubbed every inch of her body, washing away the filth, the pain, the memories of the street. As the water cascaded down her skin, she let out a shuddering breath, as if she was shedding the weight of her past. When she was done, she wrapped herself in a clean wrapper that Mama Ngozi had left for her and stepped out of the bathroom. The older woman was sitting on the bed, gently rocking the baby in her arms. "He's a strong one," she said, smiling down at the tiny boy. Uloma's heart clenched. I don't even know how to care for him, she admitted in a broken voice. Mama Ngozi looked up, her expression soft. You will learn. She handed the baby back to Uloma and gestured toward the bed. Sleep now. You are safe here. Uloma lay down on the bed, her son tucked securely in her arms, and for the first time in months, she closed her eyes without fear. As the cool night breeze filtered through the window and the soft glow of the lantern flickered in the corner of the room, Uloma felt hopeful. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, and Uloma was gradually settling into her new life. Mama Ngozi took care of her as though she were her own daughter, feeding her well and ensuring she had everything she needed to heal from childbirth. She bought her new clothes, sanitary pads, and a few personal items, things Uloma had long given up dreaming about. Most importantly, she cared for Uloma's baby, whom they named Chizom, meaning God is with me. One evening after dinner, Mama Ngozi sat outside in the compound, peeling yam for the next day's meal. Uloma was beside her, rocking little Chizom, who had just started crawling. His giggles filled the air as he played with his mother's fingers, his tiny hands grasping them tightly. The boy had bright, curious eyes and a sweet, dimpled smile. He was growing beautifully. He also had a small black birthmark on his left shoulder. Mama Ngozi glanced at Uloma, who had been quiet all evening. My daughter, she said softly. I have never asked you before, but I want to know. Who is the father of this child? Uloma froze, her breath catching in her throat, her heart beating fast as painful memories rushed back. The cold night, the uncompleted building, the cruel hands that had stripped away her innocence. I don't know him, she whispered. Mama Ngozi turned to look at her, fully, her brows furrowed. You don't know him? Una took a shaky breath. I was hawking fruits one evening when a man called me, pretending he wanted to buy something. He took me inside and he... Her voice broke and she looked down, ashamed. Mama Ngozi's eyes darkened. She set the yam down and reached for Uloma's hands. You don't have to say it, she said gently. I understand. Tears slipped down Uloma's cheeks. She had never spoken about it before, never told anyone how her life had been shattered that night. I was too scared to tell my mother, she continued in a broken voice. Then she found out I was pregnant, and the shock made her sick. She didn't survive it. Mama Ngozi squeezed her hands tightly. It was not your fault, Uloma. That man was a beast, and I pray that wherever he is, God will judge him. Uloma wiped her tears with the back of her hand. But now I have Chizom. He is the only good thing I have. Mama Ngozi smiled, looking at the little boy who was now playing with his mother's wrapper. He is a blessing, my daughter, and you are stronger than you know. Uloma nodded, but deep down, she wondered if she would ever truly be free from the pain of her past. As the months passed, Uloma threw herself into work. She couldn't sit idly while Mama Ngozi cared for her and her son, so she did everything she could to help. She woke up early to sweep the compound, wash dishes, and prepare food. She carried Chizom on her back while fetching water and helped Mama Ngozi sell foodstuffs at her big shop in the market. Uloma was determined to repay the kindness she had received. By the time Chizom turned 3, he had become the light of the household. He was a lively, curious child, always running around and asking endless questions. Mama, why is the sky blue? Mama, where does rice come from? Mama, can I carry this big yam? Uloma would laugh and kiss his forehead and say, You ask too many questions, my son, but I want to know everything, he would reply with a big grin. Seeing him happy filled Uloma's heart with pride. He was growing strong, healthy, and full of life. Something she once feared would never happen. Mama Ngozi doted on him, spoiling him with small gifts and treats from the market. "This boy is too sharp," she would often say, laughing. "He will be great one day." Uloma could only pray that it was true. One evening, as they sat on the veranda watching the sunset, Mama Ngozi spoke up. "Uloma, you have been here for 3 years now," she said. Uloma turned to her, nodding. "Yes, Mama, and I am grateful for everything you have done for me." Mama Ngozi smiled. "You have worked hard, my daughter. You have become like my own child. But now it is time for you to start thinking about your future." "My future?" Uloma asked with a look of uncertainty. "Yes," Mama Ngozi said firmly. "You cannot live under my roof forever. You need a job, something to help you stand on your own feet." Uloma looked down. The thought of leaving the comfort of this home scared her. But she knew Mama Ngozi was right. "I have spoken to a friend," the older woman continued. "Her son is the CEO of Jerry's textile company, about 5 minutes' drive away from here. They are in need of cleaners. She has spoken with her son and have asked that you resume work on Monday. It's not much, but it's a good way to start. We can enroll Chisholm in the nursery school close to the market. I will pick him up after school," she added. Uloma's eyes widened. "A job?" "Yes, my daughter. A real job with a small salary. It will not be easy, but you will be able to save for Chisholm's future." Tears of gratitude filled Uloma's eyes. She never imagined this day would come, a chance to build a life for herself and her son. She dropped to her knees and held Mama Ngozi's hands. "Mama, thank you. Thank you for everything." Mama Ngozi smiled warmly and patted her head. "You deserve happiness, my child. You have suffered enough. Now, it is time to rise." Uloma glanced at Chisom, who was playing happily in the yard. She reached for him and pulled him into her lap, hugging him tightly. For the first time in years, she felt hope burning brightly in her heart. She had been broken, cast aside and left to suffer. But now, she was rising. Uloma enrolled Chisholm in school and began the cleaning job. She was handed a mop, a bucket and a cleaning cloth. She quickly got to work, scrubbing the floors, wiping down tables, and making sure the office was spotless before the staff arrived. She worked tirelessly, not minding the ache in her back or the sweat on her brow. She had been through worse. By the time employees started trickling in, the office was sparkling clean. Some of them nodded in approval, others barely noticed her. But she didn't mind. She had a job, she had a purpose, and for the first time in years, she had hope. Uloma soon became a familiar face at Jerry's textile company. She was punctual, diligent, and never complained. While other cleaners sometimes slacked off, Uloma never did. She greeted everyone with a warm smile, from the security guards to the receptionists to the managers. Her work did not go unnoticed. "Ah, that girl is hard-working," one employee commented one day. "She's always so polite," another said. Even Mr. Jerry, the CEO himself, took notice of her. He was a handsome, imposing man in his early 40s, known for being strict but fair. At first, he had barely noticed her presence, but one day he happened to arrive early and found Uloma scrubbing the floors. He watched her silently for a moment before finally speaking. "You're here early," he observed. Uloma immediately straightened up, startled. She had seen him before from a distance, but never this close. "Yes, sir, I always come early," she replied timidly. Mr. Jerry nodded, impressed. "What's your name?" "Uloma," she replied. He studied her for a moment before giving her a small nod. "Keep up the good work," he said, and walked into his office. It was a simple interaction, but it made Uloma's heart swell with pride. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. While Uloma worked, Mama Ngozi took care of Chisom. She picked him up from school, fed him, and kept him company until Uloma returned home. Chisholm had grown into a bright, energetic 5-year-old boy who was loved by everyone in the neighborhood. "Your son is too sharp," Mama Ngozi often said, laughing as Chisholm ran around the house, chattering non-stop. He will go far in life. Uloma worked harder every day, knowing that her son was in good hands. She saved every kobo she could, determined to one day rent her own place and stand completely on her own. Sometimes she would buy groceries for the house, even though Mama Ngozi never asked her to. She was simply grateful and saw her as her angel. Everything was going well, until one fateful afternoon. Chisholm had just turned 7. Uloma was busy wiping down a glass window in one of the offices when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She quickly dried her hands and answered. It was Mama Ngozi's voice, but something was wrong. Her voice was tight with urgency. "Mama, what happened?" Uloma asked, suddenly tense. "It's Chisholm." Mama Ngozi's voice cracked. "He collapsed at school. They rushed him to the hospital." The mop slipped from Uloma's fingers. Her entire body went cold. "What?" she gasped. "My son collapsed? Mama, where is he now?" "They took him to Hope Hospital." "Come quickly," Mama Ngozi replied. Uloma's legs felt like they were about to give way. Chisholm was fine that morning before she left home. He had been laughing, playing. What could have gone wrong, she wondered. Still shaking, he begged her supervisor for her to be excused for the day, and it was granted. "Go," her supervisor said firmly. "Take care of your son. Don't worry about work today." "Thank you, Ma," Uloma cried, already running out of the office. She barely remembered the journey to the hospital. Her feet moved on their own, her heart hammering against her chest. She didn't stop until she reached the entrance of Hope Hospital. She found Mama Ngozi pacing outside the emergency ward, worry etched across her face. The moment she saw Uloma, she rushed to her. "They are still checking him. He was running a fever and then he just collapsed." Tears filled Uloma's eyes as she clutched her head. "Oh God, my baby!" She tried to rush inside, but a nurse stopped her. "Please, madam, let the doctors finish examining him." "But I need to see him," Uloma cried. "I know," the nurse said gently. "We'll call you once we're done." Uloma sank to her knees right there in the hospital corridor, her whole body trembling. Mama Ngozi placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "He will be fine, my daughter. You have to be strong." But Uloma couldn't breathe. She could still hear Chisholm's laughter from that morning, the way he hugged her before going to school. Now he was lying in a hospital bed, and she didn't know if he would wake up. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her chest, whispering over and over, "Please, God, don't take my son away from me." The thought of her son lying in that hospital bed, hooked to machines, struggling to breathe, scared her. The fear of losing him was consuming her, choking her. Just then, the hospital door swung open, and a doctor in a white coat stepped out. "Who is the mother of Chisholm?" he asked, looking around. Uloma sprang to her feet. "I am, doctor. How is my son? Please tell me he's okay." The doctor gave a small smile. "Your son was diagnosed with pneumonia, but we've placed him on treatment immediately. He is responding well to the medication." Uloma swayed slightly, relief washing over her like a flood. "Oh, thank God," she whispered, pressing her hands to her chest. "You can see him now," the doctor added. "He is still weak, but he's stable. With continued care, he'll be fine." Tears streamed down Uloma's face. Mama Ngozi let out a deep sigh of relief and patted her back. "You see? God is faithful." Without wasting another second, Uloma rushed into the ward. Chisholm lay on the hospital bed, his body covered with a light blanket. His tiny chest rose and fell weakly, his eyes barely open. An oxygen mask covered his face, and the sight of him like that made Uloma's heart clench with pain. "My baby," she whispered, sitting by his bed and taking his hand in hers. Chisholm's eyes flapped open, and he gave her a weak smile. "Mama!" Fresh tears rolled down Uloma's cheeks. "I'm here, my love, I'm here." She pressed a kiss to his forehead. Mama Ngozi stood behind her, smiling softly. "He is strong, just like his mother," she said. Uloma wiped her tears and turned to Mama Ngozi. "Let me go and buy something for him to eat. I'll be back soon." Uloma stepped out of the hospital, her mind still on Chizom. She walked quickly towards the snack kiosk just outside the building, but just as she turned the corner, she bumped into someone. I'm so sorry, she said quickly, stepping back. She looked up and froze. Standing before her was Mr. Jerry, her boss. Mr. Jerry looked equally surprised. Uloma? His brows furrowed. What are you doing here? Uloma swallowed hard, not expecting to see him in such a place. My son is sick. He was rushed here from school. Mr. Jerry's face softened. I'm sorry to hear that. I came to check on a friend who was admitted here. I hope your child is okay. He's doing better now, Uloma said, trying to smile. There was a brief silence. Then Mr. Jerry spoke again. Can I see him? Uloma hesitated for a second. It felt strange for her boss to meet her son, but she had no reason to say no. Of course, sir, she replied. Mr. Jerry followed Uloma back into the hospital ward. When they stepped inside, Chisholm was half awake, his head resting against the pillows. Mr. Jerry walked closer and stared at the child, his eyes unreadable. Then something caught his attention. Chisholm's left shoulder was slightly exposed, revealing a distinct birthmark. Mr. Jerry's breath caught in his throat. He took a step forward. His eyes widened as he stared at the mark. He knew that birthmark, because he had the exact same one. A deep frown creased his forehead, confusion swirling in his mind. His gaze snapped to Uloma. Your son, he has this birthmark? He asked, his voice low. Uloma, slightly confused, nodded. Yes, sir. He was born with it. Mr. Jerry swallowed hard. His mind was racing. This couldn't be a coincidence. The boy looked like him. The birthmark was exactly the same as his. He became restless but tried to hide it. He gave Uloma 20,000 naira. Have this for your son's hospital bill. If you need more, let me know when you resume work. Don't be in a haste to resume. Just take your time, he told her. Thank you so much, sir, Uloma said, grateful for his kindness. The next few days passed, and Chisholm was discharged from the hospital. Uloma returned to work, grateful that her son had recovered. But something had changed. Mr. Jerry had been distant. She often caught him staring at her during work, a strange look in his eyes. It was as if he was trying to figure something out. Then, one afternoon, he called her into his office. Uloma, sit down, he said, his voice serious. Uloma lowered herself into the chair, wondering if she had done anything wrong. Mr. Jerry took a deep breath. He had to know the truth. I need to ask you something, he said slowly. Your son, who is his father? Uloma's stomach tightened. She hadn't expected this question. She hesitated, pain flashing in her eyes. I don't know his father, she finally whispered. He forced himself on me. Uloma went on to narrate how a man deceived her when she was hawking fruits and how he had his way with her in an uncompleted building. Mr. Jerry's heart nearly stopped. A heavy silence filled the room. Memories he had buried for years suddenly came rushing back. A young fruit seller, a dark evening. A moment of selfish cruelty. His head spun. He could hear her voice again, the voice of the girl who had begged him that night. And suddenly it all made sense. His face turned pale as realization crashed into him like a storm. Uloma was that girl and Chisholm was his son. Mr. Jerry's hands clenched into fists, guilt choking him. He had been married for 2 years and both him and his wife had been battling infertility, not knowing that he had already fathered a child in the most horrific way possible. He wanted to tell her that he was the man who took advantage of her innocence, but he didn't know how. He didn't know how she would react. He dismissed her, packed his things and left the office. If Uloma were to be your friend or sister, what would you advise her to do to Mr. Jerry? Forgive him or make him pay for his crime? Leave your answers in the comments section.
Please tell me, are you enjoying the story? If so, tell me what lessons have you actually learned? I would really love to hear your comments in the comment section down below. And remember to support this channel, please subscribe, like the video, comment, just say something, even a word could literally mean a whole lot. So I want you to tell me what lessons have you learned from this story. Trust me, these are situations that most people actually go through. I'm sure some of you that are watching this story have actually gone through this situation. So I want to hear from you. I want to hear how you dealt with the situation that you were faced with.
I need to ask you something, he said slowly. Your son, who is his father? Uloma's stomach tightened. She hadn't expected this question. She hesitated, pain flashing in her eyes. I don't know his father, she finally whispered. He forced himself on me. Uloma went on to narrate how a man deceived her when she was hawking fruits and how he had his way with her in an uncompleted building. Mr. Jerry's heart nearly stopped. A heavy silence filled the room. His face turned pale as realization crashed into him like a storm. Uloma was that girl and Chisholm was his son. After that encounter, Mr. Jerry changed completely. He became distant and absent-minded. He made mistakes at work, something he had never done before. During meetings, he would stare blankly at documents, barely registering what was being discussed. Even at home, his wife noticed how he picked at his food, barely eating anything. Sometimes he went to bed without dinner. She became very worried and confronted him. Jerry, she said one evening, touching his arm, you haven't been yourself lately. What's wrong? He forced a smile. Just work stress, darling, nothing more, he said, dismissing her immediately. He thought of telling her, but he wasn't sure how she would take the news of him having a child before getting married to her, so he kicked against it. At the office, all the staff, including Uloma, noticed the change in him. One day, Uloma was cleaning his office floor after his meeting with some clients. She saw him sitting behind his desk, his hands clasped together, staring into space. Sir, she said softly. Mr. Jerry flinched, snapping out of his thoughts. Yes? She hesitated before speaking. I don't mean to interrupt you, sir, but are you okay? He blinked at her, startled. Why do you ask? Uloma shifted uncomfortably. It's just that you seem different. You don't smile like before. You always look deep in thought, like something's bothering you. Mr. Jerry stared at her. The girl he had wronged so many years ago was now worried about him. He swallowed hard, trying to compose himself. I'm fine, Uloma, he said, forcing a small smile. Just a lot on my mind. She nodded slowly. Okay, sir. Then she left the office. Every time he saw Uloma at work, something twisted inside him. He wondered if she would hate him if she ever found out, if she would quit the job and take his son away from him. He was still lost in thought when an idea crossed his mind. I will get closer to her and make her my friend, so she gets comfortable around me, then think of the next step from there, he said to himself, hoping that it worked. While Mr. Jerry was tortured by his secret, Uloma was having a nice time with her little family, Mama Nongozi and Chisholm. Chisholm had fully recovered and was back to his lively, curious self. Every morning before school, he would hug her tightly, his little arms wrapping around her shoulder. I love you, Mummy, he would say. Those words were her strength. At work, she continued being the best version of herself, cleaning the offices before anyone arrived, greeting employees with a bright smile and helping wherever she could. One day, Jerry walked past as she was wiping down a conference table and said, Good morning, Uloma. She blinked in surprise, then quickly bowed slightly. Good morning, sir. After that, she noticed things. He would linger sometimes when she was in the office, watching her as though trying to figure something out. He asked about her son occasionally, inquiring about his school and health. Once, he even gave her a small envelope containing money. Buy something for your son, he had said gruffly before walking away. Uloma was shocked. She thanked him profusely, but deep inside she wondered why her boss was suddenly so kind to her. One weekend, Jerry decided to visit his mother. He was losing it. Every time he saw Uloma, he was reminded of his greatest sin. After breakfast that morning, he drove to his mother's small but elegant bungalow. With a deep breath, he stepped out of the car and walked up to the door. His mother, Madame Veronica, was sitting in the living room, making a call when he arrived. She was in her late 60s, but still looked strong, her neatly tied wrapper and matching headscarf giving her a regal presence. The moment she saw him, she smiled and ended her call. "Ah, Jerry, my son, what a surprise." Jerry forced a weak smile and bent to greet her, but he couldn't meet her eyes. She immediately noticed. "Jerry, what is wrong? You look troubled." Jerry took a deep breath and sat beside her. "Mama, I have something to tell you. Something terrible." His mother frowned. "What is it?" "I have a son," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. His mother's eyes widened. "A son? But your wife has not given birth yet." "I know, it's not my wife's child. It's a child I had before I got married," he said, trying to choose his words carefully. His mother's expression darkened. "Explain yourself, Jerry. I want to understand what you are saying." "Mama, I did something terrible, and now it has come back to haunt me. Some years ago, before I got married, I visited Aguda to see my girlfriend. But when I got there, she wasn't home. She'd got an urgent call from her mother, so she left. I had taken something before going there," he admitted hesitantly, his face burning with shame. "An enhancer, a drug, something that increases a man's drive." His mother's face turned cold. "Jerry, what did you do?" He lowered his head, unable to bear the weight of her stare. I lost control. There was a girl, a fruit seller. She was young. She was just there selling her fruits and... He couldn't finish it. The words stuck in his throat. His mother's hands began to tremble. "Jerry," she whispered, her voice thick with disbelief. "Are you telling me that you forced yourself on an innocent girl?" she asked in shock. Tears welled in Jerry's eyes. "Mama, I don't know what came over me. I wasn't thinking. I swear I have lived with the guilt ever since," he admitted. Madame Veronica stood abruptly. "Jesus Christ. Jerry, what have you done?" she shouted, placing a hand on her chest. "You, my own son. You became a monster." Jerry buried his face in his hands. "Mama, please. I regret it every day. I was young and foolish, and I swear I never thought I would see her again." His mother shook her head in disappointment. "God, I raised you better than this. You ruined a young and innocent girl's life." "Mama, I know. And now I have to make it right. The girl, she had a child. She got pregnant after the encounter. She raised him alone. Her mother died from the shock of finding out she was pregnant. She lost everything. And now she works for me. She doesn't know I'm the one," he whispered. "She doesn't remember me, but the moment I saw my son, I knew. He has the same birthmark as the one I have." I stylishly asked her about her baby's father, and she confirmed my suspicion, he said quickly. His mother covered her face with her hands. "God have mercy." There was silence. Then, finally, Madame Veronica took a deep breath and sat back down. "Who is she?" she asked. Mr. Jerry hesitated before answering. "Her name is Uloma, the same girl you asked me to employ, your friend's adopted daughter." He fell to his knees. "Mama, please, you have to talk to her. Help me fix this. I want to be in my son's life." His mother shook her head. "Do you even understand what you're asking me to do?" Tears streamed down his face. "I can't live with this guilt anymore," he whispered. "Please, Mama, help me." Madame Veronica looked away, struggling with emotions. Her own son had committed a terrible crime, but a child had come from it. And now, that child, her grandson, was out there not knowing who his father was. She let out a long breath. I will talk to Mama Ngozi. I hope I find favor before her, but understand this, Jerry. You cannot undo what you have done. If Uloma finds out the truth, she may never forgive you. Mr. Jerry swallowed. I know, Mama. I just want to try. Madame Veronica could not sleep that night. She tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, her heart heavy with sorrow. She wondered if Mama Ngozi would even listen to her, and when Uloma finally found out the truth, would she ever forgive them? In the evening of the next day, which was a Sunday, Madame Veronica arrived at Mama Ngozi's house. She and Mama Ngozi had been friends for many years, but she was not just visiting as a friend. She was there to plead for her son's redemption. She knocked on the door, her hands trembling. Uloma was the one who let her in, after which she left the house to run an errand for Mama Ngozi. Immediately, Jerry's mother stepped in. She saw Chizong running around playfully in the living room. For a moment, she paused and stared in awe. He looked so much like Jerry when he was his age. She was tempted to grab him and wrap him up in a warm embrace, but she held herself. Mama Ngozi stepped into the living room smiling, but when she saw the look on Madame Veronica's face, she frowned. Veronica? What is wrong? She asked immediately. Madame Veronica swallowed hard, wondering where or how to begin. It's about Uloma, she said finally. Mama Ngozi immediately sat forward. What about her? Did she do anything wrong? She asked, concern flashing in her eyes. Madame Veronica took a deep breath. There was no easy way to say this. She clasped her hands together and whispered, My son, Jerry, is Chisholm's father. Mama Ngozi's eyes widened in shock. What? She asked, looking confused. Madame Veronica's voice trembled. Jerry, he was the man that forced himself on Uloma years ago. He was young and foolish. Madame Veronica went on to explain exactly what Jerry had told her. It was the same story Uloma had told Mama Ngozi. Mama Ngozi shot up from her seat, trembling with rage. Veronica, are you telling me that your son, your own son, is the man who ruined Uloma's life? Tears streamed down Madame Veronica's cheeks. Yes, she whispered, and I am ashamed. I am disgusted. But the truth must come out. She doesn't remember him, but Jerry wants to make it right. Please help us talk to Uloma. We don't even know how to face her. That is why I came to plead with you to help us. I know she loves and respects you, and she will listen to you, she begged. How can Jerry ever make it right? He stole something from her that she can never get back, Mama Ngozi said with a calm tone. Madame Veronica wiped her tears. I know, my sister, but he is not the same man anymore. He has been tortured by guilt since he realized the truth, and he wants to be in Chisholm's life. He wants to be a father to his son. Mama Ngozi's face hardened. You think Uloma will accept that? You think she will just wake up one day and say, yes, I forgive you, come and take care of my son? Madame Veronica shook her head. No, I don't expect it to be that easy. But I am begging you, my friend, please, help me. Talk to Uloma. See if there is any way we can handle this without breaking her completely. Mama Ngozi stared at her friend, eyes filled with pain. I will try my best, she finally let out. As they prepared to go to bed that night, Mama Ngozi went into Uloma's room to talk to her. Chisholm was already asleep. Taking a deep breath, she called out softly, Uloma, my daughter. Uloma looked up and smiled warmly. Yes, Mama. She noticed the serious expression on the older woman's face. Did something happen, Mama? She asked. Mama Ngozi sighed deeply. Then she reached for Uloma's hands and held them tightly. My daughter, what I'm about to tell you will break your heart. Uloma paused for a while and stared at Mama Ngozi, wondering what it could be about. What is it? She asked, feeling uneasy. It's about Chisholm's father, your boss, Mr. Jerry. He is Chisholm's father, Mama Ngozi managed to say. Uloma's went silent, a cold, deafening silence. She blinked rapidly, her mind refusing to process the words. Her hands trembled as she pulled away from Mama Ngozie's grip. "What did you just say?" she whispered. "Mr. Jerry is the man who took advantage of you years ago," Mama Ngozi repeated. Uloma felt like the world was spinning. Her chest tightened, her breath came in short, painful gasps. "No." She shook her head wildly. "No, it's not true." She jumped to her feet, staggering backward. "This is some kind of sick joke, right? Mama, please, tell me you're lying." Mama Ngozie's own tears fell freely. "I wish I were, my child." Uloma collapsed on the floor. "No, no, no," she wailed, rocking back and forth. Tears poured down her face. She couldn't believe that the man who destroyed her life, the man who robbed her of her innocence, the man who turned her world upside down, was the same man she had unknowingly worked for and greeted politely every morning. She screamed in agony. Mama Ngozi rushed to her side, trying to hold her, but Uloma shoved her away. "Why?" Uloma sobbed. "Why are you telling me this now? Why, Mama?" Mama Ngozi knelt beside her, tears running down her own cheeks. "Because he knows, Uloma. Mr. Jerry knows the truth. He has been struggling with the guilt. He wants to make things right. Uloma screamed as her voice broke down in raw pain. "I don't care what he wants. I don't care how he feels. I suffered. I lost my mother because of him. I begged in the streets because of him. I almost lost my son because of him. And now he thinks he can just walk into our lives and fix everything." Her body shook violently. "He is my boss, Mama. Do you know what that means? I have been serving the man who destroyed my life. I have been cleaning his office, smiling at him, saying good morning, sir, like a fool." She screamed again, gripping her hair. "I will never forgive him," she spat, her voice raw with anger. "Never, do you hear me, Mama? Never." Mama Ngozi sniffled, her own heart breaking. "I understand, my child," she whispered. "You have every right to be angry." Uloma's tear-glid eyes locked onto hers. "I will no longer work for him," she declared, her voice shaking with fury. "I will not let that man or anyone from his family come near my son. Chisholm is my child, not his, not theirs. And if he or his family ever try to take him from me, I swear, Mama, I will fight with everything I have." Her pain turned into rage. Mama Ngozi watched her with sorrowful eyes. She had expected anger, expected heartbreak, but she had not expected the fire in Uloma's eyes. The pure, unfiltered rage. This was no longer a girl who cried in the streets. This was a mother ready to go to war for her child. Mama Ngozi reached out, but Uloma stepped back. "I need to be alone," she whispered. Mama Ngozi hesitated, then slowly rose to her feet. She looked at Uloma one last time before nodding. "I will give you space, my child," she said softly, "but no matter what, remember, you are not alone." Uloma turned away, sobbing silently. The pain was too much. She barely slept that night. She lay curled up on her bed. Every time she closed her eyes, the memories flooded back. By morning, she had made her decision. She decided to quit the job and stay away from the office permanently. She decided that she would not let Mr. Jerry or anyone from his family come near Chisholm. She would erase them from her life. Mama Ngozi watched silently as Uloma dressed for work one last time, her face hard with determination. She could see the fire in Uloma's eyes. She had never seen her like that before, not even when she was homeless and struggling to survive. She sighed but said nothing. She knew that nothing could change Uloma's mind now. The moment Uloma stepped into Jerry's textile company, her stomach twisted in disgust. She looked around the clean, polished hallways, the employees greeting each other cheerfully, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside her. She walked into her supervisor's office. "Good morning, Madam Grace," she greeted respectfully and handed her her resignation letter. "I hereby resign from this job, Ma," she said, swallowing hard. Madam Grace's eyes widened. "Resign? But why? What happened? I can't work here anymore, Uloma said, her voice cracking slightly. Madam Grace frowned. Did someone do something to you? Did you have issues with any of the staff? Uloma shook her head. No, Ma, it's personal. The older woman studied her for a moment, then sighed. I don't want to force you, my dear, but you have been one of the best workers we've had. Mr. Jerry himself has spoken highly of you. At the mention of his name, Uloma's entire body stiffened. Madam Grace let out a slow breath. All right, if this is truly what you want, I won't stop you. But you should at least inform Mr. Jerry yourself. Please, Ma, I don't want to speak to him, just tell him I left, Uloma said sharply before walking out. But just as she was about to leave the building, a deep, familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. Uloma? She turned slowly, and there he was, Mr. Jerry. His eyes darkened with confusion and concern. Where are you going? He asked. I'm leaving. I quit. I will never work for you again. I want nothing to do with you, your money, or your so-called kindness. Jerry's expression softened, and he immediately looked sober. Uloma, please, just listen to me. No, she shouted, her voice trembling. I can't work for you. You are the reason my mother is dead. You are the reason I suffered. You are the reason I have cried myself to sleep so many nights, wondering why the world was so cruel to me. She turned to leave, but before she walked away, she whispered her final warning. If you or your family ever come near my son, I will fight you with everything I have. Then she walked out. She didn't look back. Tears poured down her face as she kept walking. Uloma couldn't eat throughout that day. After quitting her job, after walking away from the man who had stolen everything from her, she thought she would find peace. But she didn't. Instead, she felt lost and tired. Mama Ngozi watched her struggle all evening, but said nothing. After Chisom had been put to sleep, she went into Uloma's room to talk to her. Uloma, she said gently, I see the war inside you, my daughter. I see the pain, the anger. Uloma's fingers curled into fists. I will never forgive him, Mama, she whispered. Mama Nyogi sighed. She reached for Uloma's hand and held it tightly. My child, let me tell you a story. My own story. Uloma looked up. She had lived with Mama Ngozi for years, but the woman rarely spoke of her past. Now she sat there, her eyes filled with a sadness Uloma had never seen before. And then she began. I am a widow, like you already know. My late husband's name was Chudi, she said, her voice thick with emotion. He was a good man. I loved him with all my heart. I gave him everything, my trust, my devotion, my youth. He took very good care of me and our only child and daughter, Ngozi. 10 years after we got married, I found out that Chudi had betrayed me. I found out that he had a child with another woman, a child born outside our marriage, a child he never told me about. He deliberately kept it a secret for many years, until the day the woman showed up at our doorstep with her son. I guess she got tired of hiding. I lost my mind. I screamed. I cursed him. I told him I would never forgive him. I told him that he was dead to me, that I never wanted to see his face again. I meant every word. And he knew it. Chudi tried to explain. He told me it had happened years ago, that it was a mistake, that he never loved her. He begged for another chance, but my heart was too hardened. I made the house unbearable for him that night. So he decided to leave the house, to allow me calm down. And he left. He left, and never came back. That night, on his way to his brother's house, he had an accident. He died on the spot. Before I could even process my own anger, before I could even think of what to do next, he was gone. No second chance, no time to fix things, no time to even decide if I could forgive him. By this time, Mama Ngozi was crying profusely. Uloma couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She began to sob gently, but Mama Ngozi had more to say. I am called Mama Ngozi because I have a daughter named Nogos. Have you seen her come here since you have been living with me? No. And that is because my daughter blames and probably still blames me for the demise of her father. According to her, if I hadn't made her father leave the house that night, he wouldn't have died, although she claims to have forgiven me. She never calls nor check up on me. Turning her teary face to Uloma, she said, "You think anger will heal you, my daughter. You think hatred will make you feel powerful. But let me tell you something. I have lived with the weight of my unforgiveness for 20 years, and let me tell you, it is heavier than anything else in this world. I spent so many years wishing I had forgiven my husband. While I still had the chance, I kept waiting for time to bring me peace. But time doesn't heal what you refuse to release. My daughter," she whispered, "don't let unforgiveness become your prison. Think about your son. He will grow up and ask questions. He will eventually find out, even if you lie to him. Please, let this go, for Kizum and for your peace of mind," Mama Ngozi concluded, and quietly walked out of the room without another word. Uloma sobbed silently. She turned to look at her son sleeping soundly in bed. She reached out and gave him a gentle pat on his back as she continued to sob. She dozed off eventually. Before going to bed that night, Mama Ngozi picked up her phone and dialed Madame Veronica's number. "Veronica, I need you to come to my house tomorrow morning. Bring Jerry with you," she said. Immediately, Madame Veronica picked up. The next morning, the sun had barely risen when a sleek black car pulled up in front of Mama Ngozi's house. It was a public holiday and Chisholm was at home. Madame Veronica stepped out first. Jerry followed slowly behind, his eyes filled with nervousness. Mama Ngozi opened the door, her face unreadable. "Come in," she said simply. Inside, Uloma sat stiffly, her arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes were red and swollen, proof that she had cried all night. She didn't look at Jerry. She couldn't. The sight of him still hurt too much. Jerry swallowed hard. He stepped forward and slowly dropped to his knees. "Uloma, I have no right to ask for your forgiveness," he said. "But I am begging you from the depths of my soul to find it in your heart to let go of the pain I caused you. I was a monster. I stole something from you that I know I can never give back. I don't know what came over me. When I saw my son, our son, everything changed. I saw him and it broke me. I realized what I had done, and for the first time in my life, I wished I could go back and undo it all." Uloma let out a strangled sob. "Undo it?" she whispered, then laughed bitterly. "You think you can undo the nights I went hungry? The pain of watching my mother die because of me? The shame I felt carrying that pregnancy all alone? The fear of raising a child on the streets?" Her voice rose. "You think your regret can erase my suffering?" Tears streamed down Jerry's face now. "I know it can't," he whispered. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, Uloma, but I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you and Chisholm never suffer again." Uloma squeezed her eyes shut. The pain was too much. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to curse him. She wanted to tell him to leave and never return. But then she thought of Mama Ngozi's story. She thought of how unforgiveness had stolen everything from her guardian. The room was silent, except for their muffled sobs. Madame Veronica and Mama Ngozi watched them quietly, without interfering. Then Uloma did something no one expected. She walked up to Mama Ngozi, held her hand, and led her to Jerry where he was kneeling. "This is my angel, the one sent by God to take me and my son off the street. She has cared for both of us over the years like her own children. She gave me a home. She fed me when I was starving. She carried Kizom on her back when I was too weak to walk. She became the mother I lost. You should thank her for the life of your son. As for forgiveness, I forgive you for the sake of my son and for my peace of mind. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, she whispered. It doesn't mean I will trust you immediately. It doesn't mean we are suddenly a family. Jerry nodded quickly. I understand, he replied. Turning to Mama Ngozi, he said, Thank you for everything. At this point, Chisholm, who had just woken up, stepped into the living room, rubbing his face. Good morning, Mummy, and good morning, Grandma, he greeted Uloma and Mama Ngozi. Jerry, still kneeling, his face wet with tears, looked at Uloma with pleading eyes. His voice shook as he spoke. Uloma, please. He swallowed hard. Can I hold him? Just once. Uloma looked down at Chisholm, who was now watching them with curious eyes. Come here, my love, she whispered, her voice trembling. Chisholm walked over to her without hesitation. Uloma gently guided him toward Jerry. Jerry let out a shuddering sob as he reached forward, his hands trembling as they finally touched the son he had never known. The moment Chisholm settled into his arms, Jerry broke down completely, holding the boy to his chest like he was holding his entire world. My son, he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. My dear son. Tears streamed down Ulome's face as she watched them. From that day forward, Jerry kept his promise. He built Uloma and Chisholm a home. He set up a business in her name. He sent Chisholm to the best school. But most importantly, he never forced himself into her life. He let her heal at her own pace. And with time, Uloma finally let him be a father. Not for herself, but for Chisholm. She eventually went back to school, running a part-time program. She graduated and her business continued to prosper. Jerry eventually told his wife about Uloma and Chisholm. She became pregnant some years later and gave birth to a baby girl. Ngozi also visited her mother with her husband and kids for the first time in over 20 years. She forgave her mother wholeheartedly. Uloma met and got married to a medical doctor named Kelvin, and they had 2 children. They lived happily ever after. Forgiveness is not about excusing the wrong done to you. It is not about erasing the past or pretending the pain never happened. Forgiveness is about freedom. It is about choosing peace over pain, healing over hatred, and strength over bitterness. When we hold on to anger, it becomes a prison, one that traps us in a cycle of resentment and suffering. But when we choose to forgive, we break free. We take back control of our hearts, our minds, and our future. Forgiving does not mean forgetting. It does not mean you must allow the same pain to be inflicted on you again. It simply means that you refuse to let the past dictate your happiness. Forgiveness is not for the one who hurt you. It is for you. It is the gift you give yourself, the gift of peace. Let go, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Thank you so much for watching. Watch out for my next story. I am cooking something really big, and trust me, you can't afford to miss it. Kindly subscribe and be a part of our wonderful family. See you soon.